If you ask me, the real story isn't about how Jason Morgan survived his grueling captivity at the hands of the WSB. It is about what happens the exact second he steps foot back into Port Charles. We have seen the preview images, and let me tell you, they are absolutely chilling. This is not the stoic, invincible, calm and collected Stone Cold that we are used to seeing handle every crisis with a steady hand. The Jason we are looking at is visibly thinner. His face is marred by brutal, lingering scars, and most importantly, his eyes are completely lifeless. That dead, vacant stare is a massive red flag. It tells me that the WSB did not just torture him physically, they broke him psychologically. If he has been subjected to relentless psychological pressure, isolation, and prolonged physical torture, he is bringing a massive amount of unhealed trauma back home with him. He is a changed man, and that change is going to have catastrophic consequences for the people who love him the most. But that brings us to the real clue, the specific detail that is going to ignite this entire powder keg. It is not just about Jason's physical appearance or his internal struggle. It is about the person who is waiting for him. Danny Morgan. We know from our exclusive timeline that Danny has been heavily involved in the chaotic fallout of Ross Cullum's shooting. Danny knows the explosive, highly classified secret. Rocco Falconeri is the one who actually pulled the trigger and shot Ross Cullum on the pier. Jason took the fall to protect Rocco, sacrificing his own freedom and enduring hell on earth in a secret WSB location so that Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer's son would not have to pay the price. Danny has been sitting on this massive secret, letting it fester and burn inside him for weeks. He has been carrying the agonizing weight of knowing his father is being tortured for another kid's crime. Now, let's start connecting the dots. If this is true, if Danny has been internalizing all of this rage and helplessness, what happens when he finally sees Jason in the flesh? Imagine the heartbreaking scene. Danny has been holding on to this idealized hope that his dad will come back okay, that Jason is invincible and can survive anything. But then Jason walks through the door of the Quartermain boathouse, battered, bruised, emaciated, and haunted by severe PTSD. That is where things become incredibly interesting and frankly, absolutely terrifying. If you ask me, seeing his father in such a broken, fragile state is going to be the psychological catalyst that snaps something deep inside Danny's mind. The illusion of his superhero father will be shattered, replaced by the grim reality of a traumatized victim. It may not be a coincidence that the writers have been heavily emphasizing Danny's protective nature and his growing, undeniable frustration with Rocco Falconeri. Danny has already confronted Rocco, demanding that he tell the truth to clear Jason's name and end the nightmare. But Rocco vehemently defended his actions, claiming he only shot Ross Cullum to save Jason's life in a moment of sheer panic. To a rational adult, perhaps that makes sense. But to an angry, grieving teenager who just got his father back in shattered pieces, that excuse means absolutely nothing. This could explain a lot about where this storyline is heading in the coming weeks. Danny isn't going to look at Rocco as a brave hero who saved his dad's life. He is going to look at Rocco as the sole unforgivable reason his father was dragged into a living hell and stripped of his humanity. Every single piece of the puzzle is falling into place to create a perfect storm of vengeance and sorrow. We have a traumatized father who is in no condition to parent effectively or protect his family, a volatile teenager who feels deeply betrayed by the system and by his peers, and a guilty kid in Rocco who is already lashing out at his own parents over Britt Westbourne's arrest. If you connect these details, it becomes glaringly obvious that Danny's resentment is going to mutate into something much more dangerous than typical teenage angst. He isn't just going to yell at Rocco anymore. He isn't just going to cause a scene. The bigger question is, how far is Danny Morgan willing to go to balance the scales of justice for his broken, suffering father? Guys, this brings us to the big reveal theory, and it is an absolute game changer that will leave fans speechless. I firmly believe that Danny Morgan is going to attempt to murder Rocco Falconeri. Yes, you heard me right. A massive, devastating secret is about to explode right in front of us, and it involves the next generation of Port Charles crossing a line they can never uncross. Danny is going to bypass the police, bypass his parents, and take matters into his own trembling hands. Driven by blinding rage, profound grief, and the severe trauma of seeing his father destroyed, Danny is going to acquire a lethal weapon. He is going to hunt down Rocco, firmly believing that the only way to avenge Jason's suffering and restore order to his universe is to permanently eliminate the boy who caused it. Think about the immense psychological weight of this theory. Danny is Jason Morgan's son. He has mob blood running through his veins, a dark legacy of violence that he has always been adjacent to but never fully consumed by. Until now. Seeing Jason's lifeless eyes and scarred face will be the ultimate breaking point. Danny will rationalize that since the justice system failed his father, since the WSB covered up the truth, and since Rocco refuses to take public responsibility for shooting Ross Cullum, blood must answer for blood. This isn't a childish schoolyard brawl we are talking about. This is a cold, calculated, lethal vendetta brewing in the mind of a teenager who genuinely thinks he is doing the right, honorable thing for his dad. He is stepping into the shoes of the enforcer, a role Jason desperately wants to leave behind. And let us not forget Jason's tragic role in this impending disaster. Jason will likely try to explain the truth to Danny. He will try to tell his son that Rocco saved his life, that taking the fall was his own conscious choice, and that Rocco is not the enemy in this twisted scenario. But what if Danny absolutely refuses to listen? What if Jason's severe PTSD makes him too weak, too disjointed, or too emotionally unavailable to get through to his son before it is too late? The tragic irony here is that the very man who has spent his entire adult life protecting others as a ruthless mob enforcer will be completely powerless to stop his own flesh and blood from committing an unforgivable sin. The truth could be that Jason's absence and subsequent trauma have inadvertently birthed a monster right under his own roof. If this theory holds true, the aftermath will be absolutely catastrophic for everyone in Port Charles. Who stands to lose everything? First and foremost, Jason Morgan. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated horror of Jason, still battling his own severe psychological demons and night terrors, arriving at a chaotic crime scene only to see his son holding a bloody weapon over Rocco's body. Imagine Jason watching helplessly as the Port Charles Police Department, perhaps even Harrison Chase or Dante Falconeri himself, slaps cold steel handcuffs on Danny's wrist. Seeing his son arrested, facing decades in a maximum security prison like Pentonville for attempted murder or worse, would completely destroy Jason. It would be a fatal blow to his soul, far worse than any physical torture the WSB could ever inflict upon him. It would be his ultimate failure as a father. Then we have to consider the Falconeri family, who are already hanging by a thread. Rocco's life is in imminent, terrifying danger. If Danny succeeds, or even if he just severely injures Rocco in a violent altercation, Dante and Lulu will be thrown into a nightmare of unimaginable proportion. Dante, a dedicated cop who always tries to uphold the law, would have to reckon with the agonizing fact that his son was targeted and attacked by the son of his longtime ally and friend. Lulu, who is already dealing with the shocking, disgusting revelations about Cassius Faison faking his identity and Valentine Cassadine hiding in Carly's attic, would be completely shattered by the loss or injury of her son. The ripple effects would tear through the Spencer, Falconeri, and Corinthos families with the force of a hurricane, creating a bitter, generational blood feud that no one could easily stop. Who benefits from this unprecedented chaos? Honestly, no one, except perhaps the lingering ghosts of Jason's many enemies who have always wanted to see his legacy burn to the ground. The ultimate tragedy is that Jason returned to Port Charles, hoping to step away from the mob. He wants to focus on his family, as we know from the latest clues. He wanted a fresh start, a chance to be the father he never fully got to be. But the sins of the past, the deadly secrets kept by Rocco, and the agonizing trauma inflicted by the WSB have created a toxic, suffocating environment where a fresh start is mathematically impossible. Jason will realize that he cannot just walk away from a life of violence because the violence has already infected his own child. He will be forced to fight a war not against a rival mob boss or a rogue WSB agent, but against the darkness rapidly consuming his son's heart. The emotional stakes have truly never been higher. We are looking at a storyline that shifts the entire focus of General Hospital. It is no longer just about Jason's grand return or taking down Jen Sidwell's operation. It is about a desperate, breathless race against time. Jason will have to dig incredibly deep, fighting through his own paralyzing PTSD, flashbacks, and physical weakness to reach Danny before Danny pulls the trigger and ruins his life forever. He will have to prove that he is more than just Sonny Corinthos' weapon. He has to be a father, a savior, and a guiding light in the darkest hour. If he fails, he loses Danny to the unforgiving prison system forever, and he loses whatever is left of his own fragile humanity in the process. We may be looking at the beginning of something huge, guys. The tension is escalating with every passing second, and each new clue points toward an inevitable, violent collision between Danny Morgan and Rocco Falconeri. Something feels incredibly off about the quiet, brooding moments Danny has been having lately, and it may not be a coincidence that the writers are deliberately highlighting Jason's severe trauma right as Danny's anger reaches a dangerous boiling point. The truth could be closer than anyone realizes, and a devastating tragedy might be lurking just around the corner, waiting to strike when we least expect it. Someone may not be ready for what is coming next, and if you ask me, Jason Morgan is about to face the most terrifying, heart-wrenching battle of his entire life. Stay tuned, because this storyline is going to change Port Charles forever.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.